Welcome to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the Dynamics of Everyday Life. Today, I'm delighted to welcome another guest to the show, Gwenne Dickson. Gwen specialises in coaching and grief, an area that we don't go into that much, probably to our own detriment. Join us as we talk about why this is something we shouldn't overlook and how we can support ourselves in these moments. So welcome back to the show, everyone. And today I'm delighted to have another guest with me. Today I have Gwenne Dickson, and Gwen is a spiritual empowerment coach, and we're going to be having a fantastic conversation about grief today. So Gwen, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you, Julia. It's lovely to be here. So yes, I'm a spiritual empowerment coach, which is, I'm going to say it's a far cry from my previous life. As we're talking about grief and so on, I worked in financial services for many years, and my backstory is really that I don't like to use the word suffered from, but I had a lot of, in the role that I had as a customer relations manager in the complaints department of a financial services company, I had a lot of stress coming from below, above, the side, every direction. And also I had a lot of stress within me that I didn't realise at the time was actually self-created, or it was vibrational, it was energetic. I had no idea about any of that at the time. I just knew I was stressed, I was anxious, I wasn't really sleeping well, I wasn't performing well. I felt like a failure at life in a lot of ways, and I knew I had to do something about it just to feel better. So I started in my spare time investigating things, as a lot of people do. Went for Reiki, started to learn to meditate, you name it. I did an EFT, all of these sort of things, and a lot of things I maybe tried once or twice and didn't really follow them. And I found that I basically got on my spiritual path, or on my self-discovery journey, on my journey of self-development, just, I suppose, by chance, following step by step. Oh, that feels good, that feels a little bit better. Oh, I'm going to investigate this thing and try that. Oh, I feel I get a bit of relief from that. And started really to sort of patchwork and piece things together. And then I also found NLP and neuro-linguistic programming, which I'm sure you and your audience are well familiar with. And I really loved the power of that for me. And again, I felt it really transformative for me. And it felt I can get really associated quite quickly into those things, and it taps into my emotions. I'm an emotional person. I'm quick to tears, etc. Which, as I'm sure you know, and a lot of people will know, that's often looked at as, oh, you're too sensitive, or you're too this or too that, or all the things that we take on through our life. And we don't realise as well that those kind of things that we take on from when we're young, or our beliefs that we have, are actually impacting us vibrationally. And again, I didn't know any of that at the time, but I was just starting to do the things that felt good to me, that felt like they were helping me to improve. And one of the things I also did was finding things on Facebook and Facebook groups and communities where I felt like, oh, that helps me. And I founded my own community group at that time as well. Again, it sounds selfish, but for my own purposes, really, and also it was not completely selfish, because it was what I felt I needed at the time. It's like, well, and really with all my work and all my business, it's come from that route of, okay, if this helps me and I feel better as a result of this, I want to share that with other people. I want to pass that on. That's really the founding principle of, okay, I'm getting some benefit from this, I want other people to feel similar. So I've followed a few like manifesting groups and things like that, and through that I found someone who introduced me to, initially it was like Abraham Hicks, and all the hard work, which I love, and we'll probably circle back to that. But also she introduced me to, I'm looking for the book which is behind me, but I can refer to that later, a couple called Olivia and Ralph Okanya, who founded the Believe Releasing process, and really introduced me to the concept of my higher self, how to connect with my higher self, and that we all can do that. Everyone has a higher self, and everyone has the ability to do that. And that really got the ball rolling in terms of the vibrational healing, and realizing that probably 99% of the issues that we have are down to low vibration, or not being able to manage our energetic vibration, and not realizing that those are the things, like as I say, her experiences, and again, I'm sure I'm teaching my granny to suck eggs here, but her experiences largely before we're 7, but also after that, form our beliefs, form our, not just our personality, form everything. And we keep letting those unconscious beliefs or subconscious beliefs run the show. And those are driving our behaviours now and driving, what happens to us, what reflects back to us in our world, all sorts of things. So that was really the gateway into that. Sorry, that's a very long rambling introduction, but that's how these things go. It's like you never know. I always talk about joining the dots backwards. You never know in the beginning where this is going to lead you. You just go, right, I'm going to go here. Oh, now that leads me to there. Now this is opening up to me. And it's only when you look back and start to join the dots, you go, oh, I see how that's led to me being here. So doing all of those things in the background for myself, whilst I was still in financial services and still, managing the stress and all those sort of things, I started to do more and more of these things as not as a profession, but they were an escape plan at the time, really, an escape route of, okay, as I say, I wanted to share it. And I'm like, well, if I can learn a course and become qualified in this, I could share that in some way. I wanted to I became a meditation teacher and brought that into my skill set. I became an NLP practitioner and then later on master practitioner. Same with the Reiki. I don't do that now, but all of these things are like a gateway or a portal into another universe, almost into another identity. And that piece was big for me within NLP as well, within that project of embodying a new identity. And that again is a real cornerstone of my work now. As I've said, everything that I do, really, I go first. I do it because I need it, and then I incorporate that into, okay, how can I help others with this? And that's, how we create our community, how we attract the people that we help and serve, because they're a reflection of us or have aspects of us and aspects of the life that we've lived, the journey that we've had. So I hope that answers that. Probably prompts a lot of questions around that, but
Well, absolutely. There are a million different ways that we could go with that this morning.
yeah.
And I love the idea of joining the dots backwards.
Yeah, because
Such
you
a
can't
clever
do it in
concept.
advance.
No, you can't. But I think a lot of the times we think we ought to be able to. And that's
Yeah.
when we end up tripping ourselves up, don't we?
Yeah, because we have a certain expectation, or we think, well, if I do this, it's to get this outcome, or it's to further whatever. And then what happens is that thing doesn't happen, and then we get disappointed because we haven't really managed our own expectations, or we've expected too much. And I'm still guilty of that myself. Sometimes I'm thinking, oh, this thing, this course or this thing will be the answer to all. I think this will be the thing that makes a difference in my business, or this will be the thing that is the answer to all my prayers. And they very rarely are. They're just another stepping stone or another dot, in that bigger picture. But it's learning to sort of be aware of that and manage your own expectations, because I think as humans we're apt to kind of make a lot of meaning out of things and think, well, this is the silver bullet, this is it. And then when it doesn't happen, then we're like, oh, and then you realise how much of what our feelings and that we live in the feeling of our thinking. So basically we think that something's going to be the answer, then when it isn't, then that drives the emotions and your response to that. And it's realizing that you're doing that and having that awareness sometimes is the first bit. It doesn't mean to say you stop doing it, but hopefully it helps you stop continuing to do it for so long, or getting sort of hung up on it for so long, because you realize that actually a lot of our suffering, our pain, or our discomfort, or whatever, is actually kind of self-led, if you like, that we're creating it. But equally, when we realise that, we realise, well, we can stop that. We've got the power to change it and to reframe it and make our experience different.
Absolutely. I mean, the narratives we can create for ourselves are, I mean, mine could honestly be Oscar winning.
Yeah.
The stories that I create, and sometimes I work my way backwards and think, how did I actually get from that point to that point thinking that? It's hilarious. So one of the things that we've talked about before we came on to record was
Yes.
grief. And
Yeah.
I know that you do a lot of work around grief. And grief is something that I think in the British culture, we don't talk about a huge
Yeah. Yeah.
amount, do we?
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I think we are, we're ever polite or ever mindful of people's feelings and so on. And I think even talking for myself as well, as really we can only talk for ourselves, but even say within our families or within a circle where you have someone in common who we've all lost, you don't even talk to each other that much, or you try not to, because you don't want to upset them, and then you don't want to upset yourself, and start the kind of, vicious circle that way. So we keep a lot to ourselves because we think, oh, I don't want to go down that road, or we're frightened to be overwhelmed, and all of these sort of things. And that's, again, as you say, whether it's Britishness or whether it's just, I think there are cultures who do it better, let's put it that way. But yes, certainly we tend to, or we give ourselves a certain period of time of like, this is an appropriate amount of time or to spend on this, to allow myself to be sad or upset or whatever. And then, like you say, we've got the 7 stages of grief. We've got all the different stages of grief, but we beat ourselves up if we're going through them. We don't often make allowances for ourselves in that way either. So there's so many different ways that we prevent ourselves from actually going through the energy and motion, the allowing the emotions to be, and the emotions to be in motion, to be in flow, because we try to prevent the flow somehow, or we try to manage that as well. So yeah, it's such a tricky thing, and that's something that we spoke about as well. I've got a couple of friends who've just lost parents, and I've been through that. I know what it's like. But then again, I think we always think, well, everyone's experience is different. So you don't want to be too like, oh, I know what you're feeling, because I don't know, what they're feeling. And you don't know yourself from day to day. Certainly when I lost my mum at the time, I felt I was managing it quite well. And I was, to a certain degree. But I think also, I'm sure we've all had those experiences where you have a lot to focus on at first when someone dies. And also, with my mum, she was ill for a long time and didn't know what it was. And being the type of person that she was, she didn't go to the doctor and bother them. She kept calm and carried on, type of thing. And then by the time we did go to the doctor, that she had cancer and it was way too far advanced, really. And he didn't say that to us at the time. He referred us urgently to the hospital, and it snowballed from there. And then really it transpired that she only had a few weeks to live, which again, they don't, and I know they can't give you an exact number. We're talking about joining the dots backwards rather than forwards. They can't say to you it's a finite time. But there was a little bit of, I guess, kind of pussyfooting about in some ways of say, and my mum would say, how long have I got, type thing, and they were like, not sure, blah, blah, blah. And then sort of say to us, well, I think it's weeks rather than months. And I'm thinking, well, why didn't you say that to a mum? But then, that's a whole another story. But so as I say, when she died, she was in a lot of pain and it was quite distressing. She got the hospice at home care. And again, that didn't, because we thought she was going to go into a hospice, but she just didn't have really time to go into a hospice even. So she got hospice at home care, which was really good. And her passing itself, that's where it did help me very much in that immediate time, because having been on my spiritual journey and discovered everything and made all the changes that I'd made and being in this type of work by that time, I was kind of advanced enough to help her to transition, to help her to pass over and to evolve when she did pass over. So that eased it for me at the time. That made it easier. And I don't want to use the word justify, that's the wrong word, but it helped me to, process it, to understand it, of like, okay, she's out of pain. She's returning back to who she is, and that's a good thing. However, even knowing all that and having that awareness, I still miss my mum. And even now I can communicate with mum, and that's again part of one of the layers that's came in. It's one of the gifts that's come from grief, which I talk about, the gifts of change and those sort of things. And as I say, even having that ability, sometimes I forget to do that, or or it still hits me like it does now. Because again, I get, like I suppose I've talked about with NLP, I get so associated, and this is like another way that I can easily transport myself back to that moment or that time and feel that. Now I'm starting to understand it's a blessing as well, and it's actually one of the ways that I can help people, and it's one of the ways that I can help transform things for them. Where I have to find a balance sometimes is not upsetting myself too much, and the desire to help other people, and finding that balance. But as I say, it has been, it has ultimately been a blessing, and it has been something that I'm very much appreciative of. And yet, at the same time, it can, as I say, it can take me back very quickly to that moment. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier on about, we sort of go, oh, but it's been X amount of time, so why am I still feeling like this, or why is that still? And it's not as raw as it was, but yeah, it's instantaneous sometimes like that. It's just that. But then the good thing is I can recognise that and I can lift myself again. And as I say, that is that sensitivity, or that is that piece of my nature that actually is special and is able to help other people. So I just have to see the gifts and the challenges with that, I suppose.
Thank you for sharing such a personal story. It's huge because, like I say, we don't talk about
Mm,
grief. And then when you experience it, so as I'm very open about, I lost my best friend Steve,
yeah,
be about 3.5 years ago now. And one of the things that surprised me was, I mean, a million things surprised me about the grieving process. But
yeah,
one of the things that surprised me was the things that I thought would upset me, I
yeah.
was absolutely fine
Yeah, it's
about.
never those things, is it? It's always the tiny little things that take the feet from under you, where you've got no
Absolutely.
expectation of at all.
Yeah, and then I'd be like, why am I standing in the middle of Tesco weeping
Yeah,
about him
yeah,
when, New Year's Eve, which is
yeah,
something that I'd always spend with him, I'd be like, you know what, I'm okay around
yeah,
this.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
also
I
Mother's
found
Day.
that, yeah, very much so. I think often when it's an anniversary, or a like a holiday, or something like that, some sort of thing, like you say, Christmas, any of these sort of things where we kind of prepare ourselves, or we hype ourselves up beforehand, or like, oh, am I going to be okay? And actually you're fine because there's other things happening, or you go, well, that's fine, and you can acknowledge it. It's the tiniest little thing where, as you say, you've got no coping mechanisms is the wrong thing as well, but you've just got no advance warning, I think, and you've got no conception of why that thing is the thing that triggered you. So, that's
It
the
comes
problem.
in and sweeps
Yeah.
you off your feet, and you're like, how have I ended up here?
Yeah. So yeah, and I think that's the thing, just to help people with as well, and that's why, as you say, it is good to talk about it. It's good to be honest about that and be open about it and be compassionate about that with ourselves and with others who are feeling like that. Because again, when it first happens as well, I think you are quite numb and you're focused on, oh, we've got the funeral and we've got this. So we could sit in the funeral directors and make those decisions. Or you can have, say the funeral itself or afterwards, and don't get me wrong, there was lots of tears, but then you can also have a laugh about something, and you can have lots of those conversations. And so you tell yourself, oh, I'm actually doing really well because I'm able to, look back and laugh at things or smile about them, and then, as you say, something tiny just happens, and it never is the things that you think it is, because even when we cleared my mum's house, I did that with my brother and sister-in-law, and again, I think you feel purposeful. So even people go, oh, that must be so difficult. And I was like, well, I don't know if it was just because there was three of us doing it and it made it easier, because you just make decisions together and you said, right, do we keep this? Do we chuck it? Do we give it to someone else? And, it was quite practical and functional. And yeah, and it would be the small things, I suppose, afterwards, but actually doing that and making those decisions. And even with the house, it was once we came to hand over the house, that was the kind of emotional time of seeing it go to someone else. And it was in a nice way as well, because it went to a family with a young child, a young family, and they get to start again and make their new story in that house. So it was a house by that time. It was an empty house, but it still had a lot of memories for us and so on. And it could be things for me like seeing a photograph of my mum's garden can make me emotional, whereas actually clearing out the house and doing all those things, that was okay. So you can't, there's not a playbook in terms of, oh, you need to watch out for this one, but this, you know what I mean? It's just, we'll
Mm.
all be different, we'll all be individual with that.
And I love what you said about the timeline as well, because we can be incredibly harsh on ourselves around, well, it's, an X amount after now, so I should be okay.
Yeah, I should be over this.
Yeah. But there are also things as well in that where you think, well, actually, I want to protect other people. I don't want other people to
Yeah,
see me upset in this
yeah,
way. So I won't tell people how I feel. But
yeah,
then I've also had some people so weirded out by it. It's like
yeah,
they will literally change the subject when I mention
yeah,
it. And I
yeah,
think I'm not going to end up sobbing into my gin and tonic around
No,
this. I just want to talk about him still because
yeah,
it's
you
something
just want to
funny that he
keep
would
him
have found.
alive and keep his memory alive. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's something funny that he would have thought was funny or something that he would have said in that moment.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's to me that's really important. And I really think that we should be able to do that
yeah, yeah.
without people thinking that we're odd or strange.
And where people do get stuck is, like you say, get stuck in those cycles. And I think if you don't get the chance, that outlet to talk, or you don't give yourself that outlet, you see, because sometimes we prevent ourselves and do all these things to kind of put a lid on it and all these kind of things, then that's when we get stuck in that cycle because we don't allow ourselves to move on. So therefore, I always kind of talk about it almost like you kind of trap yourself in a snow globe sort of thing. You've kind of got yourself frozen in time of like, and you can end up being sort of like, oh, let me out of here, but I don't know how to get out of here kind of thing. And it's yeah, that's the thing that needs to change, I think, as well, of you see, letting ourselves off in terms of timeline or how it should be, because there's no how it should be. Everyone's different. And equally, some people aren't, emotional. Some people aren't, that way. And I can sometimes feel like, well, what's wrong with you if you're not like that? Because that's how I am, sort of thing. So it's not judging ourselves or other people, I think, for where they're at, but also it's recognizing that there's another way. You can do something else to open it up, and it doesn't mean to say it's got to be you're going to be devastated or you're going to go back the way. You are going to move forward. You just have to allow yourself to do that step by step, or get someone else to be that guide for you and that hand to hold, and just work through things in that way. Because what I see time and time again is people, like say, trying to keep a lid on it or trying to get back on, get back to routine or get back on with life, and then they're really struggling but find it hard to reach out or say that because they feel like, oh, the deadline's passed for that. So, I've missed my window of doing that, and that's not true. But that is a kind of societal piece, isn't it? That we find it hard to kind of to move forward with that. So
Yeah, it's very much a societal piece. I remember when Steve died, because he was godparent to both my children, and I said in particular to my daughter, I said, just because you don't see me upset doesn't mean that I'm not upset. It's just
yeah,
I don't want you to feel that you have to carry my upset. So
yeah, yeah,
I am upset, but I'm not going to put that burden on you. It's,
yeah,
I will support you through your grief because, she'd known him and grown up with him and was devastated when he
yeah.
died. And she did actually come to the funeral, which I think she found quite hard, but I'm glad that she did and she was able to say goodbye to him that way.
Yeah, I think people very much do regret that if they haven't been given that chance, or they feel, and people are doing the best that they can at the time. They might say, oh well, they're too young for that, and I don't want them to remember that. They want them to remember them as they are, and there's all sorts of good intentions around that. But like say, I know from the other side, sometimes people will be, and even my mum, and again, this is an older generation, but I think she didn't get to go to, it was her dad's funeral. I think she didn't get to go to, and also her cousin, when that she was married first time, wasn't allowed to go. Her husband didn't allow her to go to her own mum's funeral because in those days women didn't go to funerals, or some such really outdated thing, which I found
Wow.
horrifying. And it's like, imagine it as an adult not being allowed to go to your own mother's funeral, and how must that have stilted her grief process and all the everything that meant. That must have been horrific. So, like you say, it is healthy to allow that if you know that the child, or that the person can deal with it, and you're there to help them through it, which is the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my son, I was like, no, it's not right for him. But my daughter, I
Yeah,
was like, if you want to come, come. You will see a
it's
lot
a
of
choice.
adults
Yeah.
upset,
Hmm.
and as long as you're okay for that,
Yeah,
then come.
yeah, yeah,
You said something quite interesting about the work that you do. I mean, and about connecting with the person. So I talk to
yeah,
Steve all the time. I always say good morning to him when I get my
yeah,
breakfast spoon out because it was something that I gave him. But
yeah,
if I'm ever, and sometimes it can be something really flippant, like when I was queuing to get it to see a particular tennis player that I wanted to see, I was like, "Come on, Steve, let me get into this,"
yeah, yeah,
and I did. So I know that I sometimes I absolutely feel that he's almost like a bit of a guardian angel. So tell me more about, or tell us more about the work that you do around
yeah,
helping people connect with people
yeah.
that have passed over.
Yeah, and it's came about in a few different, again, it's like sort of joining moments, if you like. I never set out to do that really, but it's like when it's, as I talked about the sort of gifts of change and so on, and especially when, we work on our own vibrational healing, and that's part of the awakening journey, that you let go of a lot of things that were low vibration and were impacting them. But the higher vibration that you get, the easier it gets to connect with others. But I would never call myself a medium or anything like that. And I know that some people, have trained to do that or are naturally gifted at that, and have always been gifted in that and so on. There's a whole lot of different things around that, but I never saw myself as that, and still don't really. But I realised that, I suppose what I would say is, like, in old work parlance, if you like, or work language, when you do the 16 personalities or Myers-Briggs or these sort of things, you get your kind of types, and I come out very strongly as like a mediator or a facilitator, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of what I am. So I don't often, I wouldn't often say to someone, oh, come to me and I'll help you connect with so and so. But having worked with people one to one, and having had, and in groups and so on as well, what naturally happens is that if people are open to it, and they desire it, and they connect with their own higher self, which allows you to connect with yourself, which allows you to connect with your own inner being and so on, and we have a conscious and an unconscious gateway and so on, that when we start to open up these channels, quite often people will naturally say, oh, I can sort of feel a presence, if you like, and then they'll say, oh yeah, that's my dad, or that's my brother, or that's so and so, and they can have a real like a real time experience. They can feel their energy, and our higher self are connected to us because we're part of their soul and they're part of ours. So that's why we can, even if you've never heard about that before, you can quite easily connect to that sensation, and then sort of realize, oh yeah, I have noticed that throughout my life. I just never realized that's what it was. And then I want to say we've probably all had experiences, or certainly a lot of people have had experiences like you've probably had with Steve, where you could feel as if he's came and sat on the bed, or, you feel
Mm.
that presence and you can feel that energy. My gran and my dad actually died within 3 weeks of each other 20 odd years ago. And that was quite, that was a shock in a different way. And for a long time, I resisted my dad coming. I would have dreams, and I would wake up with my face wet with tears and so on, and because I could feel his presence, but it was like he could only really come to me in that way, because otherwise I would avoid it, because I was like too devastated, because he walked out the door and had a heart attack and I never came back. So he walked out the door and like, bye, see you later. Then we never saw him later. So that was a thing, a real shock in that way, that was really hard to deal with. So anyway, I held that off for a while with my gran. I used to sometimes feel her presence. And even now, sometimes I'll still kind of feel a presence, but if I'm not really, if it's in the middle of the night or what have you, sometimes I kind of go, oh, and then I go, oh, I know what that is, but that's the kind of thing that often people will have. And so when it's people like loved ones that we have had a relationship with, like you with Steve, and being, close friends for so long, and in each other's energy, basically, when, when we raise our vibration enough, or when we open ourselves up enough, we're sort of going halfway to meet them, and then they're having to, to use their energy to meet us. Again, when you've got that close relationship, that's where that can quite easily happen. So I had not a colleague, a client a few months ago who lost her son. And again, he was very young, and quite tragic circumstances. And she was really struggling with that, and had been doing lots of things, had been doing all the things. I couldn't even name all the things that she'd tried to help herself, and was, with some success and some not, kind of thing. And then when we connected through another small group, and I was like, I believe I can help you here, so let's do that. And she very quickly, she connected with her younger self, and with her higher self, then with her younger self, understood some things that had impacted her, influenced her, and that she was, still, were believing and was struggling with. We did some releasing around that, and she felt her son step in, and she felt his presence, and kind of reconnected with that relationship. And that was so special. But as I say, it's one of these things that it's tended to happen as a natural byproduct almost of the work that I've been doing with people on their own healing and releasing and so on. And so it's only now, again, joining those dots backwards, having had the experience that I had. I did reconnect with mum, but I had a really visceral experience of having just done some deep inner work with someone who was helping me to release things that I thought I'd dealt with, and I thought I've ticked that box. I do this kind of work now. I've passed that test. I've moved on. But there's always layers with these things, aren't there? There's always a deeper layer. Like we say, hence the reason that we're in tears and snotters and Tesco's thinking, what on earth is going on? Because it's some little tiny trigger that's still there. And I had an experience where I'd revisited something that happened when I was young that again had all sorts of implications throughout my life. And again, I'd come up against it 2 or 3 times in the releasing process. And every time you come to it, you come with another fresh perspective of either what happened for you and what you made that mean about yourself or about the relationship with, your parents, or in my case, my brother as well. And again, I thought, oh, I've got all this. And then it'd come up again in this session. And so I was sitting in the garden later on that day, and I was having a conversation in my mind or out loud with my mum sort of in the garden, because I used to spend a lot of time in the garden. In her last few weeks, we spent a lot of time together in her garden, enjoying the sunshine. It was like June, July. It was actually a nice summer. And that was the way we chose to spend what time she had left. So I had a real strong association with sitting in the garden talking to my mum. And I just started sort of saying something about what had happened, and then I felt really breathless. And I was like, I feel like I'm having a panic attack. And I was kind of like, I need to get out of here, but I'm already outside, and what's going on here? And then I realised this is her making me feel what she felt like towards the end, and that's why she was ready to go. That's why she wanted to go, because she had esophageal cancer. She had a tumour in her throat and couldn't swallow really, couldn't, breathe properly, and enough was enough really. And so I was having this, and I've got a painting in the hallway that I bought when I moved to this house, which my mum was never in, but I had a connection with it. It's called The Doorway to Beyond, and it's beautiful. And I loved the painting, and then I loved the name, and then some of the proceeds also went to the hospice who helped care for her at home. So when I had bought that painting, it was one of these synchronicities of like, oh, I love that. That's for that space in my new house. Oh, I like the name of it. That's meaningful and powerful. And then, oh, and that's also got this connection. And when I saw that doorway to beyond photograph, as I was trying to get out of the house to go, oh, I need to get out of here kind of thing, I can't, deal with this. That's when it sort of all clicked, and it's like dominoes fall in that sort of moment of like, right, she's showing me that and making me feel that, and to show to me that I can help other people with that type of transition, or with the transition of having lost somebody with the grief process. So that was a real, to say it was an aha moment or a light bulb moment kind of makes light of it. It's not, it was a kind of, I don't know, road to Damascus moment or something like that. It's like, that's been something that was very profound, but equally it's not been easy, as I say, to then bring that into my work, because it's like, I know I can do that, and I know that if I have a conversation with someone, or I'm sitting in front of someone, then I feel comfortable to say, I can support you with this, I can help you with this. If you were saying to me, well, Gwen, I'm struggling with this, I still really, miss him, and I really want to reconnect with him, I would say to you, happy to do that for you. For me, the stepping stone or the obstacle now is to say, to put a post out there, or to put some sort of promotional thing out there to say, I can do this. And I know that's probably silly, because I'm preventing people from getting the relief that they need. That's just like the next boundary for me, if you like, or the next thing that I have to overcome in order that I can help those people. And so talking to you about this today, I suppose, is a way for me to open that conversation, and to say, if this is something that you're interested in, then I would love to help you, because I've been there, and I still am at certain times. I've been there, done that, wore the t-shirt, and will do again.
No, and you're so right. Grief isn't something that happens once
Yeah,
and we never experience it again.
yeah,
It will keep coming back.
yeah,
So you beautifully segued into, because I could talk to you about this all day, but
yeah,
we've both got other things that I suspect need doing. My children might need some food at some
yeah,
point today.
yeah.
So if people have been listening to a conversation and thought, wow, Gwen is the person to help me, or I'd really like a further conversation
Yeah,
around, and I'm struggling,
yeah.
how do people get in touch with you?
Primarily, I would say I have a Facebook page, which is my business is called Living Your Best Life Coaching. So it's Living Your Best Life Coaching with Gwenne Dickson. It's quite long-winded, but that's the Facebook page. That's the nature of Facebook. I do have a website. The website is a bit out of date. It's livingyourbestlifecoaching.co.uk. Or you can get in touch with me, Gwenne Dickson. It's GWENNE Dickson. So you're probably quicker finding me personally than a lot of these things. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as me personally, and also Living Your Best Life 888, because again, I couldn't get the business name for my Instagram handle. So it's like all these different ways of joining the dots that way. But yeah, there's loads of ways to reach out to me. And as I say, more than happy to have a conversation. I've also got a Facebook group, Living Your Best Life Soul Family. So if people would like to join that and be part of that sort of supportive community, it's not just about grief by any manner of means. It's actually more about connecting with your higher self, connecting with yourself, connecting with what's true and important to you, and living your best life in that way, and helping people connect with their passion and purpose and so on. In fact, what I was doing just before I came on here is I've got a friend who I am part of her networking group, and we're doing a masterclass on Monday night so that we can help people either create their own community or find their tribe, or if they're starting their business as a solopreneur and so on, how do they network? How do they follow up with people? Because, like I say, I always, everything that I do that I've maybe found to be a challenge, or that I found as something I've had to work through in my business and my journey, always want to be that hand to hold out, or to look back to other people and go, right, come on, you can do this too, and let's help you do it, and pass it on that way, pay it forward, I suppose. So yeah, there's lots of ways to reach out to me, and just drop me a message, and they can book a free connection call and just come and have a chat like this and see if I'm the person to help them, and if I've got the skills that they need or what they're looking for. And as I said, I do lots of other things as well. That's just it's a huge part of my work now, because I say I do feel that that desire to share that in the same way that I've done with everything else, that desire to make things easier for those coming behind me, I suppose.
Oh, thank you. And I will make sure all those go in the show notes as well.
Thank
And
you.
it's a hugely important piece of work. I think grief is something that we need to talk about, and we need to get more okay and more comfortable
Yeah,
about
because the
talking
more okay
about
and
it.
comfortable we get with it, then the easier it is to live with it, the easier it is, like you say, to have that connection, and to have that, if you want to keep the person in your life, keep them in your life, and have that doesn't have to be every day, but to have that you can still have a chat with them if you want to, or you can still, make them part of your world, and, have the gap narrower, I suppose, because otherwise when we have that lack, or when we have that gulf, that's when we find it difficult. So we want to make that easier, and we want to make that transition smoother, I suppose, So that's my mission, my passion, my purpose.
And it's one that's hugely needed. So thank you so much for
Thank
talking to
you.
me today, Gwen. It's been absolutely fascinating. And thank you for sharing such an incredibly personal story for you as well. I do hugely appreciate that. So thank you ever so much.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. As I say, it helps me kind of process things, and see where it is needed. I think that's the thing as well, because I need to hear that myself sometimes as well, to remind myself of that. Okay, you're doing a service, you're helping people here, so don't shy away from it.
Yeah, and I think that's an absolute key message. Don't shy away from it, because it
Yeah.
absolutely is needed.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we're saying as well about having those conversations with your friends, with partners, with whoever is in that, and you don't need to, worry about saying something wrong. The fact that you're saying anything at all, or opening the door, and letting the person know you're there to talk or to listen when they need it, that speaks volumes, and that goes a long way to helping ease, that transition for people in that stage. So yeah.
I think you're absolutely key there. You can't say anything wrong if you're actually welcoming that person into the conversation.
Yeah, you're saying it with a good heart, and with the best of intentions. It's always going to be received that way.
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show, Gwen. Thank you ever so much.
Thank
And
you.
hopefully we'll have you back at some point to talk about all the other things that you do.
Oh, it would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Dynamics of Everyday Life. Please hit the follow button for future episodes and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram at The Dynamics of Everyday Life or find me on LinkedIn at Julia Rogers. I'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts on dynamics. The Dynamics of Everyday Life is brought to you by Coaching 42 and the fabulous team at the Podcast Boutique.